So, because as Magda Havas said, so the declarations that she have made, there are now many people, including children, who are, unfortunately engaged in this type of disorder. So maybe you can say what you think about the present scientific knowledge, how this new knowledge can, be associated with the BioInitiative Reports that you were with David Carpenter that you prepared and have done. So, what do you think about the present situation?
This conference is very important, not just in the European countries, but internationally, because people with electrosensitivity and multiple chemical sensitivity, those populations continue to grow. People continue to become sick, particularly children now we worry about, who will go to school for perhaps 12 years in environments we have created that are artificial, that are very harmful to their health, their learning, their behavior, and ultimately their reproduction. And the passage of our essence, the human genome, down the line to their children. In the past, I think all of us as scientists have concentrated on gathering the evidence to say to our decision makers, there is so much evidence now, we shouldn't be ignoring it, because if we ignore it, it will become a larger and larger public health problem. And this is now a global problem. The BioInitiative report, first in 2007 and then updated 5 years later in 2012, continues to gather the scientific and public health evidence for these effects, and they're really now inarguable. So what is the next thing that we need to do? This conference is very central to taking next steps. The next step is to take the science and to say, we agree it is more than sufficient to change public health standards around the world. We need biologically based public health standards, and we need them now. Not yet. We needed them yesterday, but we'll settle for today. And we need to communicate better with decision makers now to say, you can't really afford to wait any longer. Economically, in terms of education, in terms of health, this is too costly because it's a global problem. So what I hope from this conference is that people will now approach the World Health Organization and get the proper categorization of EHS and MCS as medical syndromes or diseases that need to be recognized so we can move on with treatment, we can move on with education. And it's also my hope that the United Nations will accept our resolutions and our declarations, because we are really talking about human health rights, the right to health, the right to natural environmental cues that regulate our bodies, the right to sleep, the right to heal, the right to reproduce, are all issues that are negatively affected by environmental levels that we have today from wireless technologies. So my hope is that this group of scientists and public health experts will move forward hand in hand with good communicators and advocacy groups to talk with decision makers and to move very, very rapidly for improvements in public health standards. And I thank you for including many of the BioInitiative members, BioInitiative Working Group members who are here with me, Dr. Carpenter, Hardell, Kundi, Dr. Johansson, myself, and I hope I didn't forget anyone. And the BioInitiative Working Group is ready to submit companion declarations or requests with technical information to back up RTAC and ECERI at your request.
Okay. Thank you. David, do you want to add some words and what you think about the future?
What we should do? Well, I agree with everything that Cindy just said. And I think I'd like to expand a little bit on what I see as one of the critical issues and that is the use of Wi-Fi classrooms in schools. When you have a router and a classroom with 10 or 20 children on wireless laptops, you have a situation where there is an enormous level of radio frequency radiation in that room. Now, we know from the studies of people that have become electrosensitive that often there is an initiating exposure, a high level of exposure, that triggers the development of the electrohypersensitivity syndrome. And it appears that in almost all circumstances, once a person becomes electrosensitive, that continues for life. They may not be ill if they're not around the electromagnetic fields, but when they become close to the electromagnetic fields, they become ill. And the illness is reflected as headaches, fatigue, mental dullness, irritability, and a general reduction of ability to function. So not only are children more vulnerable to every environmental exposure, but if we allow our children in schools where they're supposed to be learning to be exposed to an agent that reduces their ability to pay attention and to learn and promotes illness, this is a tragedy, it's foolish, and we should act right there to reduce exposure. Exposure comes from other sources as well, but that is perhaps the most obvious step that we could take immediately. When a wired computer classroom will not result in exposure, will have the same access to the internet that every child needs. But to rush ahead and make everything wireless without contemplating the long-term health effects is unwise. Thank you.